All right, so today we're going to read from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 7, Text 19. The next verse. We're reading in the mornings from Srimad Bhagavatam, and I'm just going with the next verse today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Can't hear a response, but I'll say it again. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Okay, we'll start with the Sanskrit words. Tubhyam,
Yam
Cha,
Cha
Narada,
Nada
Vrisham,
Krisham
Bhagavan,
Bhagavan
Vivridha,
Vividham
Bhavena,
Bhavinam
Sadhu,
Sadhu
Paritushta,
Paritushtam
Uvacha,
Uvacham
Yogam,
Yogam
Jnanam,
Jnanam
Cha,
Cha
Bhagavatam,
Bhagavatam
Atma,
Atma
Satattva,
Satadva
Deepam,
Deepam
Yat,
Yat
Vasudeva Sharana,
Vasudeva Shavana
Vidhu,
Vidu
Anjasa,
Anjasa
Eva,
Eva
Tubhyam cha Narada Brisham Bhagavan Vividha,
Tuyam Shanada Visham Bhagavan Vividam
Bhavena Sadhu Paritushta Uvacha Yogam,
Bhavena Sadhu Paritushta Uvacha Yogam
Jnanam cha Bhagavatam Atma Satattva Deepam,
Jnanam cha Bhagavatam Atma Sattva Deepam
Yad Vasudeva Sharana Vidur Anjasaiva,
Yad Vasudeva Sharana Viduranja Saiva
Tubhyam cha Narada Brisham Bhagavan Vivridha,
Tuyam Shanarada Visham Bhagavan Vividam
Bhavena Sadhu Paritushta Uvacha Yogam,
Bhavena Sadhu Paritushta Uvacha Yogam
Jnanam cha Bhagavatam Atma Satattva Deepam,
Jnanam cha Bhagavatam Atma Sattva Deepam
Yad Vasudeva Sharana Viduranjasaiva,
Yad Vasudeva Sharana Viduranja Saiva
Tubhyam cha Narada Brisham Bhagavan Vivridha,
Tuyam Shanarada Visham Bhagavan Vividam
Bhavena Sadhu Paritushta Uvacha Yogam,
Bhavena Sadhu Paritushta Uvacha Yogam
Jnanam cha Bhagavatam Atma Satattva Deepam,
Jnanam cha Bhagavatam Atma Sattva Deepam
Yad Vasudeva Sharana Viduranjasaiva,
Yad Vasudeva Sharana Viduranja Saiva
Tubhyam cha Narada Vrisham Bhagavan Vivridha
Tuyam Shanarada Visham Bhagavan Vividam
Bhavena sadhu paritushta uvacha yogam.
Bhavena sadhu paritushta uvacha yogam.
Jnanam cha bhagavatam atma satattvadipam.
Jnanam cha bhagavatam atma satattvadipam.
Yad vasudeva sharana viduranjasaiva.
Yad vasudeva sharana vidu anjasaiva. Tuvyam chanarada vrisham bhagavan vivridha. Tuvyam chanarada vrisham bhagavan vivridha. Bhavena sadhu paritushta uvacha yogam. Bhavena sadhu paritushta uvacha yogam. Jnanam cha bhagavatam atma satattvadipam. Jnanam cha bhagavatam atma satattvadipam. Yad vasudeva sharana viduranjasaiva. Yad vasudeva sharana viduranjasaiva. Tubhyam chanarada visham bhagavam vividam. Tubhyam chanarada visham bhagavan vividam. Bhavena sadhu paritushta uvacha yogam. Bhavena sadhu paritushta uvacha yogam. Jnanam cha bhagavatam atma satattvadipam. Jnanam cha bhagavatam atma satattvadipam. Yad vasudeva sharana vidu anjasaiva. Yad vasudeva sharana vidu anjasaiva.
Tubhyam chanarada vrisham bhagavan vivridha.
Tubhyam chanarada vrisham bhagavan vivridha.
Bhavena sadhu paritushta uvacha yogam.
Bhavena sadhu paritushta uvacha yogam.
Jnanam cha bhagavatam atma satattvadipam.
Jnanam cha bhagavatam atma satattvadipam.
Yad vasudeva sharana viduranjasaiva.
Yad vasudeva sharana viduranjasaiva. Tubhyam chanarada vrisham bhagavan vividha.
Tubhyam chanarada vrisham bhagavan vivridha.
Bhavena sadhu paritushta uvacha yogam.
Bhavena sadhu paritushta uvacha yogam.
Jnanam cha bhagavatam atma satattvadipam.
Jnanam cha bhagavatam atma satattvadipam.
Yad vasudeva sharana viduranjasaiva.
Yad vasudeva sharana viduranjasaiva.
Tubhyam chanarada vrisham bhagavan vivridha.
Tubhyam chanarada vrisham bhagavan vivridha.
Bhavena sadhu paritushta uvacha yogam.
Bhavena sadhu paritushta uvacha yogam.
Jnanam cha bhagavatam atma satattvadipam.
Jnanam cha bhagavatam atma satattvadipam.
Yad vasudeva sharana viduranjasaiva.
Yad vasudeva sharana viduranjasaiva.
Tubhyam chanarada vrisham bhagavan vividha.
Tubhyam chanarada vrisham bhagavan vividha.
Bhavena sadhu paritushta uvacha yogam.
Bhavena sadhu paritushta uvacha yogam.
Jnanyam cha bhagavatam atmasatattvadipam.
Jnanam cha bhagavatam atmasatattvadipam.
Yad vasudeva sharana vidurancha saiva.
Yad vasudeva sharana viduraja seva.
Tubhyam.
Yam,
Unto you.
unto you.
Cha.
Cha,
Also.
also.
Narada.
Narada,
O Narada.
O Narada.
Risham.
Visham,
Very nicely.
Very nice.
nicely.
Bhagavan.
Bhagavan,
The personality of Godhead.
personality of Godhead.
Viridha.
Vivrida,
Developed.
developed.
Bhavena.
Bhavana,
By transcendental love.
by transcendental love.
Sadhu.
Sadhu,
Your goodness.
your goodness.
Paritushta.
Paritushta,
Being satisfied.
being satisfied.
Uvacha.
Uvacha,
Described.
described.
Yogam.
Yogam,
Service.
service.
Jnanam.
Jnanam,
Knowledge.
knowledge.
Cha.
Cha,
Also.
also.
Bhagavatam.
Bhagavatam,
The science of God and his devotional service.
The science of God and his devotional service.
Atma.
Atma.
The self.
something's burning.
Satatva.
Tattva.
With all details.
Text.
Deepam.
Dipam,
Just like the light in the darkness.
just like the light in the darkness.
Yat.
Yat,
That which.
that which.
Vasudeva Sharana.
Vasudeva Sharana,
Those who are souls surrendered unto Lord Vasudev.
those who are souls surrendered to Lord Vasudev.
Vidhu.
Vidu,
Know them.
knows them.
Anjasa.
Anjasa,
Perfectly well.
perfectly well.
Eva.
Eva,
As it is.
as it is.
Translation. O Narada, you were taught about the science of God and his transcendental loving service by the personality of Godhead in his incarnation of Hamsa avatar. He was very much pleased with you due to your intense proportion of devotional service. He also explained unto you lucidly the full science of devotional service, which is especially understandable by persons who are souls surrendered unto Lord Vasudev, the personality of Godhead. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The devotee and devotional service are two correlative terms. Could you mute yourself, everyone? I hear like some feedback. Unless one is inclined to be a devotee of the Lord, he cannot enter into the intricacies of devotional service. Lord Sri Krishna wanted to explain the Bhagavad Gita, which is the science of devotional service, unto Sri Arjuna, because Arjuna was not only his friend, but a great devotee as well. The whole process is that all living entities, being constitutionally parts and parcels of the Supreme Living Being, the absolute personality of Godhead, have proportionately minute independence of action also. So the preliminary qualification for entering into the devotional service of the Lord is that one become a willing cooperator. And as such, one should voluntarily cooperate with persons who are already engaged in the transcendental devotional service of the Lord. By cooperating with such persons, the prospective candidate will gradually learn the techniques of devotional service. And with the progress of such learning, one becomes proportionately free from the contamination of material association. Such a purificatory process will establish the prospective candidate in firm faith and gradually elevate him to the stage of transcendental taste for such devotional service. Thus he acquires a genuine attachment for the devotional service of the Lord, and his conviction carries him on to the point of ecstasy just prior to the stage of transcendental love. Such knowledge of devotional service may be divided into two sections, namely preliminary knowledge of the nature of devotional service and the secondary knowledge of its execution. Bhagavatam is in relation with the personality of Godhead, his beauty, fame, opulence, dignity, attraction, and transcendental qualities which attract one towards him for exchanges of love and affection. There is a natural affinity of the living entity for the loving service of the Lord. This affinity becomes artificially covered by the influence of material association, and Srimad Bhagavatam helps one very genuinely remove that artificial covering. Therefore, it is particularly mentioned herein that Srimad Bhagavatam acts like the lamp of transcendental knowledge. These two sections of transcendental knowledge and devotional service become revealed to a person who is a soul surrendered unto Vasudeva, as it is said in the Bhagavad Gita 7.19. Such a great soul, fully surrendered unto the lotus feet of Vasudeva, is very, very rare. Excuse me. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha E Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Vanchakalpatarubhyashta Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanan Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Patrini Devi Shesha Srinivadi Pashtata Desha Tarini. The translation again is, O Narada, you were taught about the science of God and his transcendental loving service by the personality of Godhead in his incarnation of Hamsa Avatar. He was very much pleased with you due to your intense proportion of devotional service. He also explained unto you lucidly the full science of devotional service, which is especially understandable by persons who are soul surrendered unto Lord Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead. Could you all please excuse me for one moment? I need to attend to something. Thank you. I was feeling really distracted by my children. So Gaetano and the kids are going all the way outside of the house. All right, so they're on board with that, and I am going to continue sharing some thoughts and that I might have about this verse or, Bhakti Yoga devotional service. So I'm a little distracted that whole time I was reading the purport. Okay, so well, I felt really excited reading this purport because I thought usually I'm a little nervous to just go with the next verse whenever I've been like asked to lead a class. I don't know what's about to happen in the next verse that we're, when we're reading systematically. And I choose some verse that I feel like I could be like have more control over for some reason, like, oh, I'll pick a topic I'm comfortable with, or I'll go to Bhagavad Gita. That seems more comfortable, but it's sort of really just me wanting to control the process and make sure I'm safe and make sure I'm comfortable and don't make mistakes or something like that. So anyway, I was like, oh, let's just go to the next verse no matter what it is. I'm going to speak about it. And well, when I read it, I was like, okay, I feel a little comfortable. Because I always like talking about devotional service. Just that one thing really always just, I just have this like feeling of, yes, that makes complete sense. Like when I encountered this concept that we are eternal servants of the Lord. And when I encountered that concept, I didn't believe in God or have a relationship with God at all. So I sort of, the way that I sort of worked with it for a while was, yeah, we are all servants of the absolute truth, whatever the truth is. And the truth may be God, and I'm holding space for that. I don't really know. But yes, like devotional service to the absolute truth is just absolutely, I'm on board with that. So, okay, in this verse, and in the purport, we're understanding like how we're invited to begin to learn devotional service. And like basically, what does that look like? Actually being given the knowledge of what devotional service to God looks like. What do we need to do to qualify ourselves? And what are the results when we go ahead and we do those, when we go along with the system being provided by the spiritual master and by the Lord? There's a system they're offering. There's regulations and guidelines being offered in the scriptures, the bona fide scriptures of the world. And there's guidance being offered by the bona fide spiritual masters sent from the Lord to us fallen conditioned souls. And we, if we go along with the program, there's results that we're going to get. And if we don't, there's whatever we do, there's consequences and results. And so we can sort of test it all out as we wish. And that's, we have independence to test out the processes given by the Lord or not, and see what happens. So I like took out some parts of the purport and made sort of a list of in this purport, and I'm sure there's more that could be added, but what are the I pulled out initially what are the qualifications for being given transcendental knowledge and being invited to practice devotional service. So Prabhupada said that we need to be inclined to it, like agreeable and interested. He used the word inclined. I'm expanding on that to, what that means. Like we're inclined to it, like we're attracted, we're interested, we're willing. Later on, he says when we become a willing cooperator. So we're cooperative, we're willing, we're interested, we're available, we're willing to show up, see what this is about. Prabhupada said that, so it's interesting because like you kind of have to be a devotee before you become a devotee. Like you have to be willing to surrender before you actually, in the purport, he's saying that it is actually our natural position. So we're like, there's just a covering over this natural devotional mood and attitude that we have. So at the same time, when we're so covered over, it can feel like, I'm not there yet, but I'm just I'm bowing down. I'm going to this program. I'm going to bow down. I'm going to like sing this song, you know, and I'm going to chant some mantra I never heard of. For those of us who weren't like born into this practice, even maybe some people that are born into it may not believe it. Like, what is this all about? But for those of us who don't have any conviction or any devotional association going into it, it can feel like maybe artificial, or like we're like layering something external onto ourselves. But actually, according to the Vedas, this is the practices of devotional service as guided by the bona fide spiritual master. They're just an uncovering, they're like an uncovering of what's already there. So the process just reveals our natural devotion. But there's like a little leap of faith that we need to give at the beginning of this practice, when we really, you know, it gets leaps of faith all the time throughout it to increase our devotional service. But I'm just thinking of the moment of like beginning and cooperating and being inclined, and, you know, so Prabhupada says we need to voluntarily cooperate with persons who are already engaged in transcendental devotional service. So yeah, the only way that we really get to know what Krishna wants, what pleases him, what doesn't please him, is to hear from authoritative sources and to be in association with people who are practicing those authoritative practices. So that's really the only way that we find out. Otherwise, we are running a great risk of concocting what devotional service is, or hearing from other people who have concocted what devotional service is. It may not be like bona fide or actually the absolute truth, which for me is like, I'm very, I have an intense feeling of not wanting to be misled or do, and you know, and not that I'm acting in pure devotion, because I'm not, but at least I can see that and be like, I know that's not the pure, that's an illusion, you know. And so whatever, you know, and I guess, you know, I'm just very careful and cautious. And so I took my time to check out, you know, Srila Prabhupada and what he was all about and what he stood for. And I, over time, through association with devotees and through association with Srila Prabhupada, I came to feel that this man is not speaking about anything except for devotional service to the absolute truth, to the Lord, and to the point where it's almost overwhelming or sickening, or just makes me, you know, it's challenging, but he's so devoted. The Srila Prabhupada is so devoted, and it's his life mission. It's his life mission to spread love of God, and he was very successful. And through that association increases our faith, which Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport, that the result of being inclined and being willing and cooperating and learning and engaging in devotional service with others who are also practicing or in pure devotion even, because we can associate with people, you know, in person who may be present in the room, or that we may be associating through Vani, through the sound vibration of the spiritual master. He's alive and available, and so that association, it increases our faith. I know that this is my personal experience. Dear Govinda and Malini have been like shining examples in all of our lives. I'm sure I can say that confidently for everyone here. And many others, like there's something so special about people practicing devotional service. And I've never encountered on the planet, like there's just this like humility and surrender and love and warmth that I've experienced with devotees. And that increases my faith, seeing the qualities of the devotees being cultivated. It really increases my faith that there's something really here, there's something working, something really happening with bhakti yoga and bhakti yogis who are sincerely practicing. So other qualifications, I'm kind of touching on the qualifications and the results of the practice. I have these two lists on my notes right here on the computer. So a person who is a soul surrendered unto Vasudeva. This person gets access to transcendental knowledge and the science of God, and a few times in the purport and in the text, in the verse itself. Well, Srila Prabhupada defines Bhagavatam as the science of God and his devotional service. And in the translation in the verse, he's actually, I don't know who the speaker is. Would someone unmute themselves and tell me who's speaking in this portion?
It's Brahma speaking to Narada.
Okay, Lord Brahma. Yeah, so he says, "Oh Narada, you were taught about the science of God and his transcendental loving service by the personality of Godhead in his incarnation of Hamsa Avatar." Okay, so I'm not going to speak about Hamsa Avatar today. There's not much information. Dear Govinda sent me to a place that I asked for information about Hamsa Avatar. I did not look that up because of time, and also Prabhupada doesn't even mention him in the purport, and I'm just going with a lot of what's in the purport today. But that's interesting. Who's Hamsa Avatar? That's a question I put out to you. We can learn together later. So there's a science of devotional service, and there's a science of God. I find that really exciting. Like, it's not a mystery of God. It's like there's a science to God, and like, okay, I want to know that. I want to know what that science is. You know, the art and science of devotional service. To me, that sounds really inspiring, interesting, exciting. Not that I feel that way 24 hours a day, 24/7, no, but and so yeah, another thing he mentions in the purport, Prabhupada, no, this is in the verse. He says he was very much, so speaking of Krishna, he was very much pleased with you due to your intense proportion of devotional service. So intense desire and action in devotional service is very pleasing as well. And so transcendental knowledge is given to that devotee. In Bhagavad Gita, I think 10.10, Krishna says, let me see if I can remember the verse. I'm a little shy to just recite verses like in front of the group or whatever, but how does it begin? You tell me how it begins, someone. Maybe I'll say the whole thing. I don't remember, but anyway.
Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam purvakam
Dadami buddhi yogam tam
yenamam
upayanti. But that verse says is to those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Okay, so this is Krishna's program. This is what is happening, and we can cooperate, we can resist. That is our choice. So in this verse, we get to find out, though, if we do cooperate, what the result might be. And he says it other places too, but different descriptions of the results of intense devotional service to the Lord. Prabhupada says one becomes proportionately free from the contamination of material association. So twice he mentions proportionate. I find that interesting. It seems like there's just, yeah, he says in the earlier in the purport, the correlative. So the devotee and devotional service are two correlative terms. I don't fully understand that, but basically there's a relation between how much effort we give to devotional service and to cooperating with the spiritual master and the Lord and how much we're free from contamination. So it's like a purification process, which he says in the purport that it's a purificatory process. So the results of cooperating with the instructions of the Lord and the spiritual master are we get established in firm faith. We gradually elevate to the stage of transcendental taste for such devotional service. We acquire a genuine attachment for the devotional service of the Lord. And through that faith and that taste and that elevation and that attachment, we experience conviction. And that in that conviction, well, it carries us to the point of ecstasy, which is just prior to the stage of transcendental love. So it's so far out where we're heading. And I don't have any realizations about those later stages at all, but just about the willing part. I'm willing. It sounds good. I want that. Excuse me. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says there is a natural affinity of the living entity for the loving service of the Lord. This affinity becomes artificially covered by the influence of material association, and Srimad Bhagavatam helps one very genuinely remove that artificial covering. So I remember when I heard the concept of that Krishna consciousness is not, it's the constitutional position of the living entity. I remember I was at Rebecca and Patrick's one of their homes, and Abhi was giving a class, and he explained that. It was shortly after I experienced the advanced Sappho Advanced Seminar in 2015. I think, Gyanesham, Bhaktilata's husband, was there. He was a part of my process of discovering Krishna consciousness. And
2014 to be exact.
Nope, was it? Oh, 2014. Okay. Yeah, so right after my first advanced seminar, I had a second advanced seminar in 2015, but the first one, I was just surrounded by devotees, and Abhi was there doing kirtan constantly, and he was like 21 and just freely sharing kirtan a lot, and I was like, oh, I love it, and that was all a really fun summer. Anyway, so yeah, I remember that moment where I really took it in, this concept that Krishna consciousness or God consciousness is just the natural state of the soul, and that we're just covered. And it just made so much sense. And I was meditating on that this morning when I was chanting, thinking about this class. Like, why did it resonate so much with me? And I previously to Sappho, I spent like 11 or 12 years or 13, 14, I don't know, long time. 11 maybe. 11 years in like another like personal growth organization that was not spiritual at all. It wasn't spiritually based. But I spent a lot of time in that organization, and one of the concepts is that we are, like, it was just kind of human. It was very humanistic and very complementary to what we do in Sappho. But there was just this theory that humans are good, and that humans are naturally loving, naturally powerful. So it was like a process for uncovering the qualities of the human. And the theories there were that we're covered over by patterns, habits, coping mechanisms. And so we all figured out a way to cope when we were young, and it's really complementary to what we do in Sappho. And then the process for uncovering that is emotional release processes. And this is fine. Krishna built into our bodies emotional release processes. And there's people out there who are experts in exactly what those emotional release processes, how they work. And this organization was phenomenal. And I got so much healing and self-realization from it. And it wasn't spiritual at all. But the idea that we're covered over and that there's an essential qualities that are just shining underneath all those conditionings and patterns and coping mechanisms that we acquire and choose and yeah, that makes complete sense that would be true in the spiritual platform. That's, I mean, they're the same, really. It's the exact same theory. It's just admitting that there's an actual soul, an eternal soul underneath all of that. So I remember hearing that from Avi Wolf, and being like, yeah, this makes sense, being excited. In Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya-lila 22, verse 107, there's a common verse. It's like when I saw it, I knew it's familiar and I can memorize this, and I should, but I don't have it memorized yet, so I'm going to read it to you. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunai Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Karaye Budai. So the translation for that is, pure love of Krishna is eternally established in the hearts of living entities. It is not something to be gained from another source. When the heart is purified by hearing and chanting, the living entity naturally awakens. So, so for those of us who don't really have firm faith in Krishna consciousness and Bhakti Yoga and the teachings of these sages and of Srila Prabhupada and Krishna, yeah, like, even if we don't have firm faith, Krishna is arranging that we get to run into devotees, and if they're sincere practitioners, they're very attractive, and some of us become really curious, like, oh, what did they have? Like, I want that. I want those qualities. I want that strength, that power, that beauty, that surrender, And we are invited to go ahead and do hearing and chanting processes, and if we just take a little risk, then actually our spiritual life can awaken. And it's not like a clean, simple process. It's a gradual process. Prabhupada says it's gradual. It's a purification process. We're not only learning how to do devotional service, but we're also unlearning all of the conditioning and all of the paradigms and habits and the modes of material nature. We're kind of also letting go of all of those things that aren't serving the soul anymore, and we're learning a new process. So, it's uncomfortable to hold space. Like, am I really going to step into this paradigm of I'm a devotee of the Lord, and that's my compass for my life? I'm still in that question. It's not like I'm like there. Today I had like some experiences of like, okay, I was walking and chanting, and I was like, you're the supreme controller. In my prayer to Krishna, I was like, you're the supreme controller. You're the supreme. I was like repeating that in my mind, you're the supreme controller. And, because I tend to think I know what's best. I had a conversation with Mother Malini yesterday, and I'm inspired by you, Malini, to reconsider some of my concepts and let go of maybe some illusion I have. I don't want to be an illusion, so I'm willing to just change the paradigm. Okay, I'm not the supreme controller. Krishna is. And like when I try on new paradigms, like devotional paradigms, it's always relieving. It's like there's logic to it, but it's also just practically speaking, it's relieving, because my prior paradigm was like, I'm alone, I'm the one who knows, I'll figure it out, and it's just like exhausting. I'm carrying the weight of the world. I'm talking about myself here, I'm telling you generally some of my consciousness, complicated, but yeah, it's like I was exhausted, I was alone, I was thinking I know things, and and I still have that in me, and I'm wanting to purify that. I would love to just I like this devotional paradigm, the Bhakti Yoga paradigm, and I'm willing to cooperate, try it on. You're the supreme controller. And like, where does that leave me if I'm just a soul surrendered unto Vasudeva. Like, whoa, like, am I passive? Am I just passively being dragged around or not doing anything? Or am I aggressive or assertive? You know, because I imagine that assertiveness, like the mode of goodness, like I still need to do things. I'm not just, like, by being surrendered to the Lord, there's still action to take. You still need to engage our intelligence. We still we still need to like make decisions, but we don't need to make them alone, separate from Krishna. And when I make decisions with Krishna in mind, I don't know where this is going. I'm just sharing. When I make decisions with Krishna in mind, as if we're making decisions together, instead of like, well, I need to figure it out. Like, what's the, like, how can I beat the system, or how can I, you know, figure it out and like use all my logic, and then whatever my logic says, or whatever my, you know, and I'm just, you know, what I'm trying to say is like it's like more magical, like surrender and like magic, I think, go together. And so this invitation to cooperate with Bhakti Yoga, to associate with devotees, to learn the process, to let go of our conditioning, to establish our faith, to develop conviction, to develop love of God. It's just like such an amazing opportunity for humility and surrender. Prior to Krishna consciousness or trying it out, the word humility and the word surrender, the concepts, they're nowhere in my vocabulary, and they're nowhere in my association. It wasn't like anything that anyone I knew was interested in. And for me, it's like medicine. For me, it's medicine to do spiritual surrender and to cultivate humility. It's just like, thank you, please, I need that. Otherwise, I'm alone, and I'm prideful, and I'm stubborn, and I'm resisting, and I'm not experiencing any satisfaction in that paradigm. So I'm taking this one on. Thank you, Krishna. So, oh, okay. So I got a little bit more. My document is challenging to scroll down. Okay. So as I was like thinking about this class, I didn't prepare too much. I tried to focus on chanting in preparation for this class, because I know I can think that I can prepare a better class by working really hard and making sure I'm safe and making sure I have all these quotes. And I wanted to be a little bit free-spirited with you today. But I had the thought when I was chanting about, okay, if we're not following the guidelines and the science of God, then what we're doing is whimsical. And so I looked up the word whimsical and what did Prabhupada say. And here's a little section from the introduction to Bhagavad Gita. He says, Vedic knowledge is not a question of research. Our research work is imperfect because we are researching things with imperfect senses. We have to accept perfect knowledge which comes down, as is stated in Bhagavad Gita, by the Parampara disciplic succession. We have to receive knowledge from the proper source in disciplic succession, beginning with the supreme spiritual master, the Lord himself, and handed down to a succession of spiritual masters. Arjuna, the student who took lessons from Lord Sri Krishna, accepts everything that he says without contradicting him. One is not allowed to accept one portion of Bhagavad Gita and not another. No, we must accept Bhagavad Gita without interpretation, without deletion, and without our own whimsical participation in the matter. The Gita should be taken as the perfect presentation of Vedic knowledge. Vedic knowledge is received from transcendental sources, and the first words were spoken by the Lord himself. The words spoken by the Lord are different from words spoken by a person of the mundane world who is infected with 4 defects. A mundaner is 1, is sure to commit mistakes, 2 is invariably illusioned, 3 has the tendency to cheat others, and 4 is limited by imperfect senses. With these 4 imperfections, one cannot deliver perfect information of all-pervading knowledge. that's the end of the quote from the introduction in Bhagavad Gita. So it takes a leap of faith, in my opinion, to just accept Bhagavad Gita as it is, without contradicting it, deleting, interpreting, changing it. I think we all have different levels of like willingness to surrender and resistance to authority. In my little viewpoint, there's like, from wherever what I want to say is that from wherever we're at, we all come to spiritual life and self-realization with different strengths and weaknesses that all of them can be dovetailed into this process of bhakti yoga. Like what I'm thinking of is there's certain people who in their childhood experience being imposed upon through what appeared to be spiritual authorities. And it's like those people tend to, not always, but they tend to resist some new paradigm where there's an authority. And I'm just thinking of, for example, Gaetano. I don't know, I can speak about him because he's my husband. I don't really want to speak about him, but he was imposed upon and is like some more resistance comparatively, me and him. He had more resistance with this process because of that. And yet he had this total love of the actual chanting because it was transcendental and just he could just trance out on it and just kind of have this like rave, trance. Like, he came from like he liked like electronic rave music that just were repetitive and got him into meditative state. So, and I didn't have that. I was resisting the actual practice, but I was loving the philosophy. So anyway, the point is like I didn't have anything, and I was like feeling like thirsty or like desperate for some transcendental knowledge or relationship with God. I never had it. So when it finally all sort of unfolded, I was like, sure, Krishna is the supreme person of Godhead. I need it. Like I'm not worried about the details, but I know the philosophies. The philosophy is resonating, and I'm going to go with what's resonating. This is what's showing up at my front door. I'm not going to go check out all these other spiritual paths. I don't have time for that. I have a 2 and a 4-year-old. Back when I was just checking it out, I had 2 young kids. Like, I'm not going. This is it. I'm going with this. It's working. I like the associate. I was using my own process to just go with it. And Gaetano was like, yeah, I'm open-minded, and I love the chanting part. And so what I'm saying is so like the pains of our childhood can be like totally they can, not just childhood, but whatever experiences, whatever strengths and weaknesses we have going into it, it can, if we surrender, there can be like this magical sort of dovetailing of whatever we bring to bhakti yoga, to the service of the Lord. It can be used perfectly, wonderfully, and magically if we just go with if we just like kind of like take that little leap and go into the journey of going back to Krishna. I'll just read this one little translation. That I have more, but just one little verse from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 16, verse 23. Prabhupada says, but he who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. So there's kind of like a lot to lose if we don't cooperate with Krishna's paradigm. And I know that can feel like, oh, we're victims, we have no power or choice. We do still have choice. But it's illusion to think that we were really independent to begin with. We're never independent of the paradigm. We were never independent. We just didn't realize it. Maybe we, so what I'm saying is like, I'm gonna share something from Gaetano again because he's one of my gurus. We were talking about like, assertive. Being in Srila Prabhupada's mission, like, and doing things like, okay, I want to preach, I want to go to the streets and then distribute books and do Harinam, like those kind of real direct mission, Prabhupada's mission types of activities. And he's like, I'm really not attracted to do that. Like, oh, I'm going to go in the street and say, hey, you know, here's this practice that once you start it, you can't turn back. And it's gonna, you know, it's gonna like it was like basically he was feeling a little bit like he didn't have any power now at this point because he's too far down the path. And Krishna, and he's like, and if you step off the path, you know, God will yank you back onto the path. Like he was just like, I'm not gonna preach this. And I was like, okay, yeah, you don't want to bring anybody into the victim. To be victims of Krishna consciousness. Like, yeah, that's your experience. So just having totally different experiences, but it's still inspiring. He was just like fully honest. And so anyway, we all have our different resistances, but what's nice about our unique association here is that we can experience the resistance, we can communicate it, say, oh, you know, I'm angry at Krishna, or I'm just resist the process, and we can experience the resistance, and that can like move us through it. Anyway, I just mostly find it really magical watching people come to Krishna consciousness. Like, wow, you know, I love the stories of people who come to return to the Lord. It's like the best stories on the planet is like people's journey back to God. So thank you all for listening. Today we talked about the science of God and cooperating with the science of God in devotional service, and what might take place when we cooperate, and also what we lose if we don't associate with the Lord and pure devotees and other practitioners of Bhakti Yoga. So that is all I have to share with you all today. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Would anyone like to share any comments, questions, realizations, challenges? I would love to hear from you. Ramachandra.
Now you
Hello?
can. Yes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. There were two things that were coming to mind. I really was struck by your phrase when you said you have to almost be a devotee before you're a devotee. And I thought that was really interesting. And thinking how I realize almost like your previous experience of this other personal growth process, that was almost like what it meant to be a devotee, like having some appreciation for the goodness of the soul or human beings, having respect. And I think it's really interesting, cooperation, like a cooperative spirit. It's like being a devotee before being a devotee. I have to cultivate good qualities, like open cooperative qualities to be able to receive Krishna consciousness. And that's what it means to be a devotee before being a devotee, because I can receive all the beautiful transcendental knowledge in the world, but if I'm not open to it, then it'll slide right off. So I was appreciating that point, because Prabhupada, he really, he emphasizes this cooperation, and I thought that was really a part of being a devotee before being a devotee. Like that's the prerequisite. What does he say here? Preliminary qualification, right? So it is this cooperation. So I was appreciating that point. And the second point that I was really thinking of when you were talking about controlling and supreme controller, this is also on my mind lately a lot, which is like God as Purusha, right? Purusha means controller. And I'm really absorbed in the names of Allah. They're the 99 names of Allah. And I've like done flashcards and memorizing them and reciting them, because that approach to God is very much about he's all powerful, all great, and he's also the controller. And he's it's just this very powerful aspect of God. So I sorted out certain names of God, like different categories, and there was a whole category that I kind of labeled as like the controller. And so I was thinking, there isn't a name of Allah that says the supreme controller, but there's all these like sub functions of controlling. For example, he is the constrictor, al-Jabbar, I think. And then he's also the reliever, al-Basir. I have to look this up again. Al-Basit. So he's the constrictor and he's the reliever. He's also the giver of life, al-Mumin, and he's al-Mumit, the taker of life. So he's controlling everything. He's the, it just helps me to understand, the delayer and the expediter. So al-Mukhakhir is the expediter or the delayer, and Mukhadim is the expediter, whichever, get those mixed up. And that was really helping me understand, like, even with this whole COVID thing going on, everything's being so delayed. Like everything's being delayed and we have to wait, and we have to wait some more. And I was just thinking, like, Allah, God is the delayer. He's controlling everything. He's delaying everything. And if he also wants to speed things up, then he'll also speed it up. He'll expedite it. So I was just appreciating this kind of point you're making. Oh, you're the supreme controller, and almost understanding all the subtle ways that God does control helps me also surrender to that plan, because I think that surrender is cooperating with God's plan and his will instead of resisting it. So I think I really appreciate that understanding also about how God is controlling in all the different ways, and just to give my heart more peace and understanding.
Wow, that's so beautiful. You're looking at the names, the 99 names of God in Islam, and that sounds really fascinating and beautiful. And yeah, there's like distinctions about the way that the way the Lord controls.
Yeah, exactly, distinctions.
Yeah, and it's dynamic. You know, it's not just like this one. He just controls. You know, and you know, that can be, people can feel like victimized, but I think by that, you know, like feel not victimized. We just feel like they're powerless. Therefore they're powerless. But it's sort of like we're like observers of the Lord. Like if we're in devotional service, then we're just like observing the Lord and ready to serve him, not so much worried about like, oh, how much independence do I get from this action of his or from this plan of his. And I also heard you say that we cultivate devotional qualities before like Krishna decides to reveal his service, you know, to bring us devotional service to engage in. So that makes, that's a nice way to put it, that we're cultivating qualities beforehand. Thank you, Dr. Lata. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dominique, for the lecture, the class. What I highlighted in the purport, which kind of triggered me, that I thought about sharing, and perhaps you or some others would feel inspired to say their opinion about that. One Prabhupada, he said, by cooperating with such persons, I guess that's the persons who are like engaged in transcendental service, the prospective candidate will gradually learn the techniques of devotional service, and with the progress of such learning, one becomes proportionally free from the contamination of material association. And why is it triggering me? Because I mean, I remember in the beginning of, like when I started practicing, I really connected to the aspect of how inclusive devotional service is and how broad-minded Prabhupada is and devotees and the practice itself. And feel that huge potential sharing Krishna consciousness with everyone. And like this paragraph sort of like sets me in the tune that, oh, the more I become the purpose is to become very technical and rigid, and then the effect is that, you know, I like isolate myself from association, like material association, or like I don't feel like isolating really from anyone, you know, and it's like triggering to hear that from Prabhupada, that, you know, we're gonna go out somewhere else in the woods and the forest and just let the world, you know, go to hell. It's kind of like, feels like kind of like selfish. I don't know. So I was wondering, what do you feel when you hear that from Prabhupada, that paragraph, or other things that resemble that?
Well, my response is that I believe that he's talking about our consciousness, not so much that we are not associating with other individuals or living entities or people who are having like they're not experiencing Krishna consciousness, so they're entangled in the material nature. I don't believe he's saying that we're not going to be associating with others, but that our consciousness is not going to be materially contaminated. So I think it's just a distinction within our consciousness, not really that we're not going to be interacting with others. I don't see it as isolation, but that our minds, that we're associating with transcendental energy, and the association changes. But that doesn't just mean individuals. It could be like whatever we consume, whatever we purchase, like the environment we're around, the location. You know, there's so many ways that we can make our life more sattvic or more transcendental, like our association, what's around us, what we take in, more transcendental. But I don't think it means isolated.
Certainly, we can see from Prabhupada's example, he certainly did not run away to the forest or a cave. He went to New York and Florida and Europe and Russia, and so clearly, as you're saying, Dominique, it's about consciousness. That this whole purport, and I appreciated very much how you followed the purport, Dominique. The whole purport, Prabhupada's basically he's kind of describing a 9-step process based on two verses from Rupa Goswami, found in Nectar of Devotion, found in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Just so you're aware, because I really liked how you followed each step of the purport. So those 2 verses from Rupa Goswami, they're very well-known verses in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. It defines a 9-step process, starting with that al shraddha tata sadhu sangato bhajana kriya. It starts just where you say, it starts with faith, like you said. Yeah, we need to be a devotee in order to start to be a devotee. And so that's what that process is, that we need to have enough faith, enough trust to begin to associate. That's the second step, to begin to associate with those who are practicing the process, or those who are masters in the process, like Srila Prabhupada. And so it starts with faith, and then Prabhupada goes, and then it goes through, okay, now that I've associated, now, like, let me actually begin to practice. Let me begin to practice. Let me consciously practice, not just kind of hang out and take prasad. Okay, that's a next step, bhajana kriya. Let me commit to some practice. And then, as this purport describes, then we get some purification. And then we get more and more steady. And then the final 2 steps of the process are the ecstasy, bhava, and the 9th is the actual love, the actual prema. So I'm just referring for your knowledge. I'm referring to you that those 2 verses from Rupa Goswami, Prabhupada's following those here. And I appreciated your response to Ramachandra Prabhu there, and it's about our consciousness. It seems that these verses that Prabhupada is he's kind of giving guidance on how to prepare our consciousness so that we go out into the world and we're actually learning the art and science of how to associate in a way where wherever we go, to the office, in our families, where to a seminar room, wherever we go, we're touchstones for spiritual transformation. And so this is the science of how to not further entangle ourselves in anartha, in material entanglement, how to purify ourselves through the sadhana process, through the process of appropriate association, and then we're potent, and then we're empowered to associate wherever, and share this consciousness. Just since you, I found it appropriate that you didn't mention Hamsa Avatar in a sense, because interestingly, Prabhupada did not mention Hamsa Avatar in the purport. I don't actually see the name even in the word for word. Prabhupada did put the name in the translation. And in all of Prabhupada's teachings, it's an avatar, an incarnation of Krishna, that Prabhupada really doesn't mention. Hamsa Avatar does appear in the 11th canto of Bhagavatam, and the 11th canto, 13th chapter, Hamsa Avatar is teaching the sons of Brahma some very profound, enlivening philosophical distinctions. So I appreciated how you spoke very personally about the philosophical principles and psychological principles that the verse and purport touch on. Hare Krishna.
Dominique, you're on mute.
Hare Krishna. I wasn't going to speak. Did you want to share something?
I have I couldn't understand Ramachandra's question, and so I had Izzy explain it to me, because thank you for your question, Ramachandra. And in a purport, Prabhupada doesn't say that you become free from material association, or that we should free ourselves from material association. He said, like, learn the technique of devotional service, and with the progress of such a learning, one becomes proportionately free from the contamination of material association. So what we are becoming free is a contamination, because like Dominique was saying, with a different consciousness that we approach the material energy, like if we see everything as Maya, then we are in Maya, because the material energy is external energy of the Lord, and it's a beautiful energy that's used for our liberation. And then Srila Prabhupada here, it doesn't say free ourselves from material association, he said from the contamination of the material association, which I think is an important distinction. And then what I wanted to share is that when you read the verse, Dominique, about the Hamsa Avatar speaking to Narada, sometimes something that comes to me is that maybe a narrow approach of all those personality. Like we have the 30 volume of Bhagavatam, and then when I'm thinking of those personality, as I think of those events in their life, and kind of, I know that it's a narrow-minded way of approaching all those personalities. So with this verse, he opened the mind that, oh, Narada, he heard from someone else, and than the Bhaktivedanta, or he heard from someone else than Brahma. He heard from Hamsa Avatar, and we don't know about that. We don't know much about it, but by giving a glimpse of that pastime, for what it does for me is that opening my mind to, like, there is so much more to all those personalities that is not given in this Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada says that there is different Bhagavatam, like in a heavenly planet, the Bhagavatam like I don't know, like 100 times bigger than the Bhagavatam we have here. And then there is all the Puranas and all the different Upanishad where there's different stories, and to see that all those personalities, Brahma and Narada and all those personalities, they have unlimited pastimes, unlimited time when they receive transcendental knowledge, unlimited time when they give transcendental knowledge, and that the Bhagavatam, as we receive, is very, very partial, a biography of all those personalities. So with this verse, it gave me a dimension that was helpful to remember that. Thank you for your class. I really appreciated it. It was a lot of laughter also here. We had a lot of laughter during your class because you made the philosophy so approachable and so touching. So that's all I want to share. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for sharing. Your mind is expanded by this verse. Well, everyone, thank you for your association. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Haribol.
Dominique. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
All good to Prabhupada. Haribol.
Haribol.
Shri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Chinani Namate Sarvati Gaurani Pachani Navashishach Navipasya Charyatani